The federal government disclosed on Monday that the Department of Petroleum Resources, the Petroleum Products Pricing Regulatory Agency, and the Petroleum Equalization Fund are all officially scrapped and do not exist anymore. It also said while workers of the three agencies will be protected, their chief executives had been relieved of their various appointments.
Now, the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Timipre Silva, stated this while speaking on the sidelines of the inauguration of the boards of the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority and the Nigerian Upstream Regulatory Commission in Abuja. He explained that with the passage of the Petroleum Industry Act, the NPRA and NURC had taken over the functions of the DPR, PPPRA and PEF. He said competent hands were now handling the business, adding that Nigerians should brace up for exponential growth in the oil and gas sector. To discuss this, we have energy and crude oil expert, engineer Yabagi Yusuf, in the studio to discuss this. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Show.
Thank you.
It's good to have you. Now, this PIA is one of the bills that have been a bill that has lingered for quite a while before it eventually passed. At least over 20 years, we know so far. Now that it has been passed, we are seeing changes are going to be made, definitely, beginning with the scrapping of some of these agencies. How is this going to impact on the oil and gas industry?
Well, let me first of all congratulate Mr. President, for this historical milestone, in the growth of the oil and gas industry in Nigeria. It has been the bane, in the development of the oil and gas industry. The fact that we didn't have what you can call international best practice regulatory, environment where the international best practice will take place. So, in that line, what Mr. President has done is quite commendable, and I think history, generations unborn will appreciate him for doing that, because what it has done is to save Nigeria amount of looting that you will never believe is taking place. So, but again, yes, it's good to pass a piece of legislation, to give accent, which Mr. President has done, but there is a lot that is yet to be done for us to really get to the intention of the PIA, which means you want to have transparency, accountability, good governance in the operations of the oil and gas sector in Nigeria, so that the billions of dollars that accrue from that sector will become something that will be available to Nigeria to use, to even avoid, taking loans like, we're doing now. If we're benefiting from the resources, from that sector, believe you me, others would have to come to Nigeria to ask for loan. It's not Nigeria going to ask for loan. What am I saying? This is a sector that contributes more than 90% of our foreign exchange earning, in this country. This is a sector that has so many backward and forward linkages with other sectors of the economy. When you talk about GDP, yes, the sector itself contributes less than 10%, to GDP. But because of its linkages with other sectors of the economy, it contributes, we look at agriculture, you look at service industry like banking and things like that, that contributes almost 70% of GDP. Without oil and gas sector, those industries will not be as active as they are. So you can now see how intertwined, the oil and gas industry is with the economy of this country and the future of this country. So, yes, we want to commend those that today have been, the proscription of those agencies, DPR, PPRA, PEF, PEF, and then now they are subsumed under the new two regulatory agencies. But the question you ask is, how much has really changed? Because these are the same individuals who were running this industry prior to the passing of the PIA. What has changed? Has the environment changed? To me and to those who are keen observers of what is happening in that industry, believe you me, we are worse off. Do you know why I say so?
How we?
We are worse off in the sense that the whole essence, the whole principle of PIA, like I said, is accountability, transparency, and good governance, isn't it? So now, accountability cannot take place unless you have what you call checks and balances, and accountability cannot take place, transparency cannot take place unless you observe the principle of civil service, which says that no agency of the government can start a business transaction and end it without another agency of government coming to check what that agency is doing. I have no qualms or anything to against the prosecution of DPR, PPRA, PEF. But what about the other agencies that today were outlawed by this PIA? Agencies like Waste and Measures Department, like Commodity Export Department. Why am I mentioning them? Waste and Measures, there's an act, of the Law of Federation of Nigeria, 2004. They call it the Act W3. That's Waste and Measures Act, which says that before you use any instrument for measurement to transact business in Nigeria, you have to subject it to the tests of these departments. That is the Waste and Measures Department, meaning that it has to become legal, and then after they checked it, it will become accurate, then it will be fair. So now today, you said by the law that has been passed, Waste and Measures Department has no role in that sector again. Commodity Export Department has no role, and there are some other agencies that specifically the bill says that their functions will cease with the coming of PIA. So what have you done? You have murdered transparency, accountability, and the good governance you are talking about prior to the passing of this bill. And the bane of our development in this country is corruption. So we have a situation that we are trying to change, which means there was no good governance, there's no transparency. Corruption is the order of the day in the oil and gas sector. We all know that. And then you now come up with a bill that tells us that they are introducing accountability and transparency, and then you now remove checks and balances. You don't want any agency of government to know what you are doing. So the issue of, and I remember when Dr. Roland Lukman of blessed memory was talking about this PI, because they brought it into during General President Obasanjo's regime. They were talking about making that the industry is opaque as it is today. So with this PIA, it will become open to Nigerians to know what is happening, and the culture of transparency, accountability will be entrenched. Today we woke up to meet a bill that has in fact completely made a nonsense of that.
So are you saying that these new commissions these new regulatory commissions that are coming on board do not have these departments that are supposedly going to check these excesses that you have mentioned?
No, they may have the departments, but that is for their own purpose. Nobody says that the industry should not regulate itself for its own purpose. You must do that. But internationally, Waste and Measures Act is an international law. It's not peculiar to Nigeria. Every country implements Waste and Measures, what you call legal metrology. Legal metrology is an international order of the economy that you must obey. Every sector of the economy. All other regulatory agencies are subject to the checking and the certification of these agencies of the government, which the constitution of this country put in place. It is a constitutional matter, and to even again, modern of things, you did not go to amend the Waste and Measures Act. You didn't even repeal it or amend that act. So which means we are now assigning one function to two agencies of government. What are you calling for? Crisis? And going forward, I'm not saying that they don't have, they don't have the rights to check the meters for themselves, for their own sake, for their own whatever it means. But you can't say that an act of constitution, an act of parliament, shall cease because you now have another act, and you didn't go to repeal the other one or amend that one. So you must have something, an agenda that is not transparent, that is not axiomatic. It's not something that is in the interest of this country. Otherwise, you would have enhanced and then promoted, what you have in the place of accountability, which is checks and balances. It's a very simple logic. There's nothing that is complicated here.
But Timi Silva mentioned, I remember vividly in an interview, that the law has already repealed those acts.
No, they can't. They can't. You can't repeal Waste and Measures Act law. Internationally, I'm telling you that the Waste and Measures Act, has what you call traceability. They have what you call a standard, primary standard. Every country has a primary standard against which you check the measuring instruments in that economy, so that everybody would be working towards the same measurement, the same accuracy. And their own primary standard is traceable to the primary standard, the international standard, which is in Paris. Every country has a standard which is called primary standard, every country. So there's no country, a sensible country, that will say we are prescribing Waste and Measures law. In fact, before this time, it was punishable. If you violate the Waste and Measures law, like in Britain or what have you, you could be killed, really.
So this Waste and Measures law, is it binding by virtue of our constitution or by virtue of international law?
No, constitution.
Which one?
Oh.
The Constitution is in the exclusive legislation of the Constitution, item 66 of the second schedule of the Nigerian Constitution. It is listed as item 66.
So it will require some kind of constitutional amendments? Is that what you are saying?
Exactly. And there's no way, there's no country in this world that will say we are prescribing, a Waste and Measures law. It has never happened. This law has been there since the beginning of this country. In fact, the colonial masters, when they came, they had to, introduce Waste and Measures law and domicile it with the police department at that point in time.
So
ensure that, things, because you are talking about accountability, transparency, isn't it? You are talking about when you go to market to buy things, you are not shortchanged. That the meters they are using, the waste they are using, how are you sure it's accurate? For instance, you use this telephone today. When you use, they say you have consumed 1 minute airtime. How are you sure it's 1 minute? Or you consume this light? The power sectors will come and the operators will come and say you have kilowatts, so you have consumed your house. How are you sure those meters are working correctly? So that is the work of the Waste and Measures Department. Or you drive into forecourt to buy fuel. Who is checking those meters on your behalf?
So do you consider this as some kind of constitutional crisis, or maybe some kind of
policy assault and constitutional crisis? And I believe that it must be somebody somewhere that has some agenda different from what they are telling Nigerians, and that's why we are calling on Mr. President to take a second look, because this is not something that is personal or anything at all. It's something against the interests of this country. It's not about Waste and Measures Department or about the new regulatory agencies that are put in place. It's about our nation. We can't be just seeing people, filtering our resources, and without you knowing what is happening. We're checking on your behalf. That's the question we are talking about.
Was this conversation ever raised?
It was raised on the floor of the Senate. I know that for a fact because I called some senators when that bill was about to be presented on the Senate. About 24 or 48 hours to the time they are going to the Senate was going to discuss it, and at least some senators stood up and called the attention of the Senate President to those clauses, and they asked that those clauses should be deleted, and it was deleted on the floor of the House of the Senate. So how did it find its way into the PIB that was presented to Mr. President? Who did this to us? That's the question Mr. President should ask. The records are there. The records are there of the House, of the deliberations of the Senate on that day. So they should check it.
Who is responsible for checking all of these flaws?
Mr. President's aides. And how could it be that the whole National Assembly should be taken for a ride? And somebody somewhere will go to cheat this country, to do to this country what generations unborn will not be able to cure.
Few weeks, I would say maybe barely a month or so after the PI was passed into law, we saw the president send that same law to the National Assembly for another amendment, considering the what do you call it now, the board members requesting an increase in the number of board members, from 2 to 6 and so on and so forth. Do you think that there was diligent scrutiny of those laws before they were passed?
Those ones are cosmetics. I'm telling you, they are cosmetics. They are fundamental issues which the oil and gas sector is aware. Those people, they know what I'm talking about. What they did, all changing board members, those are cosmetics. The real issues are Do we have working meters in the industry? Does Nigeria know how much we are producing? Does Nigeria know how much we are exporting? Does Nigeria have a policy as to where to measure production? Does Nigeria know how much royalties we are paying? Do you have meters measuring your royalties, which is about 22% of your earning? Do you know how you measure your PPT, which is about another 20% about 44% of your earnings? In fact, the entire sector has to have a measuring infrastructure that will be credible, reliable. Ask NAITI, they will tell you. NAITI has 3, audits that they carried out every day to ensure transparency and accountability. The audits are, they have process audit, they have what they call fiscal audit, they have financial audit. We are talking about the process audit. If you don't have your process audit in order, there's no way your fiscal and financial audit will be garbage in, garbage out. Because process audit is about how do you measure? How do I know how much am I producing? Are the meters working? That's the process audit. And go to 90 report, even the last one they sent out. They are still asking the government or the industry to carry out remediation that they have brought out that these meters are substandard. So those are fundamental issues. Nobody is talking about that. They're talking about cosmetic issues. How somebody can find his way into the club so that he also will participate in the looting. That's happening.
But experts are saying that the Petroleum Industry Act is a game changer. But from your explanation, it seems that there's something wrong.
It's the biggest swindle of the century that I can find against this country. The biggest swindle, and I can defend it anywhere. And internationally, everybody knows what I'm talking about.
Do we have working meters right now to determine some of the data that we see every day on our papers? We produce
I told you there's a department by constitution that was put in place to check, to ensure that before these meters are even put to use, they have the certification of that department. And that department periodically is supposed to go there annually to check, or periodically as they deem fit, to find out are they working in accordance with specification of manufacturers, and to also ensure that those meters are working fairly. So the issue is that you are not following the international best practice. That's the point we're making. We don't have working meters in Nigeria because there's no agency that will come and tell you this is working meters. Petroleum industry cannot tell me that what we are doing is correct, and nobody. They say trust, but verify, isn't it? We don't have the verification supposed to come from the agencies that are supposed to, which is the Waste and Measure Department I'm talking about. It's not about Waste and Measure Department, and it's not also about the issue of having. This is something else.
Okay. All right. We'll just go on a quick break now, and then when we come back, we'll just pick it up where we stop right now.
This is the spot marking signifying the starting point of the dam. 40. No compensation has been given to any community member, and no place has been earmarked for their relocation.
Since why they go, they never come back.
And this is where the hydroelectric power dam is supposed to be constructed. But for many years, the story has remained the same. This is the site of the proposed hydroelectric power station in Mambila. But the irony is, no construction has even commenced yet.
Hear you.
All right, thank you for staying with us. In case you're just joining, you're watching Daybreak on Trust TV. And here we are talking about the recently passed PIA law. And then we have in the studio an expert who has been sharing with us his thoughts, quite insightful thoughts, I would say. And it's quite shocking to get to realize that all along we do not have concrete metering system to measure some of the data that we see every day. We hear that Nigeria produce, so and so number of barrels per day. We export so and so. How did we arrive at that?
Well, I can tell you for free that it's all guesswork. And the 90 will tell you also that it's a guesswork because I participated in the 90 audit, about 2-3 times like that. I carried out on behalf of 90 the study of the metering infrastructure in the upstream, midstream, and downstream sector. And we came up with a book, it's almost a book, a huge volume of reports that says that what you have in the industry is substandard, cannot be relied upon. In fact, there are some terminals where they don't even have anything you call meters. And they are operating. So and then you have to ask yourself, how do we even measure production? When you don't have meters at wellheads, you don't have meters at the gathering fields, why you have meters are when when people come in to buy our crude oil who will not accept nonsense, will now say you must have a fiscal meters because I want to know what I'm buying from you. If you don't know how much you are producing, that's your problem. That's the situation we have in Nigeria today. At the terminals, export terminals, you have what we call fiscal meters. So people coming to buy crude oil for Nigeria insist on the international best practice and the most accurate meters that you can ever find. So it's existing at the crude oil, at the export terminals, in spite of the fact that there are some infractions also going on, even with the meters. But those infractions do not affect the buyer. It affects the seller, which is Nigeria. So the question what we are talking about today is that PIA should have addressed that issue. Those are more fundamental than somebody just going to Mr. President, I want to be a member of that board so I can also chop, partake. Believe me, that's what is happening. It should stop. Mr. President has the capacity and wherewithal to do that. He should do it for this country, for generations yet unborn. These are things that are happening. The IT can give them records if they want, if they don't want to believe me. I also carried a study for 90, like I said, in 2009. Ribadu was also asked to go around, and I remember when Jonathan was there, to find out whether the meters are working. Ribadu came out and said the meters are substandard, they are not working. I know that the Navy also carry out studies. Senate also carry out studies. Everybody in this country knows that we are losing billions every day, and nobody is doing anything about it.
Now, talking about buying crude oil.
Yes.
According to a statement by the federal government, they said these amendments to the PIA will woo in investors into the country. Are you of that opinion as well?
It will woo in investors who have been coming to the country because they know that, I'm sorry to say, but this country is one of the countries that even those organizations, the people they sent to Nigeria to do business in Nigeria are different set of people.
Okay.
Different set of people because I have interacted with them. They are different set of people. They can't do that in their countries. You know the funny thing, in their own facilities, go to Shell facilities, go to ExxonMobil facilities, go to Total facilities. These things I'm talking about are working in their facilities. Once the crude oil leaves the government unregulated environment and it comes in their facilities, they have working meters. They have online systems. They don't lose one drop of crude oil once it has become their own. But before it becomes their own, that's when this nonsense happens. And DPR and all these people that now they have changed them, just the problem has changed name, that they are now the two regulatory agencies. One is upstream, midstream, and the other one is downstream and what have you. It's one and the same because the same environment still exists. That's what I'm calling Mr. President to look into. And these are very simple things. They are not rocket science. They are about, creating an environment that will ensure transparency, accountability, and good governance takes place. It matters to us as a nation.
Now, what's the implication of this, I would say, lacuna in this PIA? What's the implication of that on the goal to sanitize the oil and gas industry and all of that? It means, or it looks like, it's a dead end. Would it be right to say that?
It's not a dead end. We have a president who, by implications too, is also the Minister of Petroleum Resources. So the buck stops at his table not only as the president, but also as the minister of that industry. So he has no explanation. He has no excuse. Nothing to tell generations to come that, oh, I didn't know about this. And I passed the bill that entrenched illegality in this country. Because it's illegality. I'm talking about international best practice. I'm talking about things that happen at the Senate. It's criminal. People behind it should be taken to the court. I mean, to be before the court. They should be prosecuted. You know, these are records that are there. I'm not saying things are not there. How do you have the audacity to even violate your own constitution? And you pass it? You pass a law that says that your constitution is of no consequence? What kind of National Assembly do we have?
Now, is there any effort by anybody to maybe approach the court over this matter? Is there any?
I'm sure some people will do. Some will do, and I know even the ministries concerned are also writing to Mr. President. I'm aware that they have called Mr. President's attention to these, inimical, action by some group, a clique in the oil and gas sector that doesn't want to rest. This has been going on since the days of Lukman. They are so adamant that they want to ensure that they legalize this illegality so that they can continue to steal this country blind. And if we allow this to happen, believe me, we'll continue to borrow until God knows when, because the money that's accrued to us will not come to us. Into private pockets.
But do we hope to see any form of response, from this?
Well, I know that there are letters before Mr. President. You should ask them. Where are the letters from Federal Ministry of Trade and Investment? Where are the letters from other agencies who are calling our attention to the fact that they've been ousted from their legitimate constitutional role in the industry? And the funny thing, they allow the private individuals who they appointed to check and then burn our country from the two ends, because here we are losing to theft, and then here you have appointed those they call prescient agents. That you don't know what they are adding. They are not adding no value, but they retain the prescient agents. While you have agencies of government that should be empowered today in today's world, who does prescient agency? No, nobody does, because you have technology. Abacha introduced it because at that point in time, technology was not at the stage it is today. You can't sit in your office and know what's happening at terminus at that point in time. Today, even people operating businesses, small businesses in motor garages, are using internet. And like I told you, the people doing business with us, once the oil leaves our facilities into their facilities, they are using these facilities.
So the beneficiaries of this, I would say, fraud are more of Nigerians than international parties. Is that correct? Or
what Nigerians get is pittance. What they get is pittance, believe you me. It's pittance. They get nothing compared to what these international thieves are doing in stealing our crude oil through manipulation of the process, which has been brought to the attention of Mr. President. You cannot claim that I don't know. No, there's no way, because I'm aware. Mr. President cannot claim this. Minister of Justice should step in. He should step in and find out these laws. How do we wake up? How do we end up with really, turning the pyramid on its head completely in terms of transparency and accountability? Because these are laws. These are things that are written there. It's not something that somebody is imagining or something like that. And it's so pedestrian that I can see. If before I have people checking me, and I say I want accountability and transparency, then I now say no, nobody should check what I'm doing. Nobody should check. I don't have any problems with DPR, PPR, PF being proscribed or being subsumed. It's okay. We want a very sound, strong, regulatory agency in that place. But allow other agencies, as even the principle of civil service says it. You as an agency cannot, on your own, start a business and end it from production to selling, and no other agency of government can come and check. What are you doing? Is this your father's money?
So how do we checkmate this fishy activities going on?
Mr. President should do it. It's a legislative bill, isn't it? It's a legislative bill. Mr. President should send a bill, an amendment to that bill to the National Assembly.
That amendment has been sent already. Are you saying that
No,
this
the
aspect has been
amendment sent.
omitted?
The amendment sent is for people to get into the club, to be a member of board, and this one, which is cosmetics, which is just nothing. That has nothing to do with fundamentals we're talking about. The fundamental issues are: how do we ensure that you have meters who are working? How do we ensure accountability, transparency, checks and balances in that sector? How do we ensure that generations that are born are not swindled the way we are swindled today? We are where we are today because the pre-PIA environment was all commerce. Everything was happening in that sector, and more so will happen now because they have been legalized by the National Assembly. Stealing has been legalized against this country.
What role will the international community play in this issue of Western measures, department and all of that? Is there any role that they can play to influence maybe certain decisions?
Of course, there's a role they can play, but you can't be, how do you say it, more, you can't cry more than the bereaved, isn't it?
Right.
And if he knows and they say it's turn blind eye, so, all that, I mean, what the international community can do already, the ministries under the same government are crying out. So before you even go to international community, the same ministries are crying out that this is murder of the interest of this country. Mr. President should please do something, step in. That's all they're saying. And they're not saying it for themselves. For how long would they be in that ministry in any case? They're talking about Nigeria, the future of this country. Oil is the future of this country for now, until all the other efforts, come to fruition, and then to replace oil. But for a long time, it's going to be a very relevant part of our economy. So what we are saying, some of us are saying, is that do the right thing. That's all we are saying.
All right, talk to us about the impact of this PIA on oil and gas exports permit, and all of that. Do you see that there's any impact there?
Well, there used to be impact, but now that two laws have been violated here. Act of Parliaments, 2 Act of Parliaments. One is the PIE, that is the one that's the petroleum export, the one you're talking about. You have a department under Federal Ministry of Trade and Investment that issues out export permit to buyers of crude oil and gas from this country. And this came on board in when we had structural adjustment program. You can imagine, since that time. So they instituted, even though they prescribe export license and things like that, but they believe that there's a need to check what is happening in the oil and gas sector. We can't leave it open like that, even though we are saying, when they abolished export license and things like that, if you remember. So even at that time, they recognize the fact that oil and gas sector is too important to just say anybody can do whatever you like. So the export permit issuance was not given to oil and gas sector, NNPC or wherever to issue, because they wanted to introduce accountability, transparency, and good governance. It was domiciled with Federal Ministry of Trade and Investment at that point in time. So how do you now wake up in today's development and everything and say, no, we don't want anybody to come and check us again? It doesn't make sense. So what it has done is that it has violated the constitution of this country. That's all, and for the interest of some few that are there who today are thinking that Mr. President does not know, or nobody knows what they are trying to do to this country.
So would you say the House of Representatives is performing its oversight function?
Well, I think the National Assembly as a whole, yes, they are performing their oversight functions, but fifth columnists are there. There are people that have infiltrated, that hollow chambers. Otherwise, there's no way. If you didn't know, as Mr. President or Senate President, you didn't know how inimical a clause is in a bill you are about to pass, and one of your senators stood up and said, "Sir, I'm calling your attention to this clause. It's inimical to the interest of this country," and you say, "Delete it." It was deleted. Again, the following day, when you are submitting your bill to Mr. President, the same clause that you deleted, have now been brought back into the bill. So Yes, they are performing their oversight functions, but there are some influence in those places that are against the interests of this country. That's all we are saying. And we cannot, some of us cannot allow that kind of thing to happen against this country.
So would you say there is a kind of a political fair play going on?
Corruption. It's not political fair play. It's corruption. It's not about APC or PDP or anything. These ones they are not even politicians. Those ones that are pushing this kind of bills, a scheme to rob this country forever, of its fortunes. It's not about politics. These are interest groups. These are interest groups. And I remember in 70s, there was a bill passed by the United Nations. I can't remember the number now, but the United Nations warned developing countries about these international companies coming to do business, especially extractive industries, that they should be careful. These ones are coming for profit. They don't have your interest at all. Their interest is profit, how they can maximize profit. So be on the watch out. So you're talking about what international organization can do. United Nations came out with this warning at that time. They said these companies coming to your countries, they are not coming for your development. They are coming for their interest because that's what they are set up to do.
So do you think that there's some kind of conspiracy or some kind of connivance with some Nigerians and some international
Definitely.
companies?
They cannot do it alone. They cannot do it alone. But the painful aspect is that today we said a bill that took 22 years to come to fruition, to come to become a law, will end up being a kind of policy somersault, being the worst bill against the interests of the country. The worst.
Could this be the same reason why it dragged for this long? And would you say that the passing of the bill is just a political goal?
Exactly. That's why they were filibustering the bill for as long as it took. Until Nigerians now woke up and say, wait, no, please, something should be done about this bill. Everybody was talking. It's just like the electoral bill. The Nigerians, in their thousands, every angle of everybody was saying, no, this bill must be, that e-transmission of results must be. So unfortunately, Nigerians are not aware of this one. For them to make as much noise as possible. And this is more important than even, it's also as important because it's about the economy. It's about our resources, our future for now.
Right. So before we wrap up the discussion, do you see a future for investment in oil industry in Nigeria?
Well, you see, there are two kinds of investors. There are investors that are looking for the kind of environment you have created now. That's what they are looking for. It's not any other thing. There are investors like that all over the world. So they will come in droves and give you the billions. But they are taking out trillions. And there are investors that would like to have a sane environment, where they know that whatever they invest, they're earning their entitlement, not taking anything, that does not belong to them. So all over the world, there are investors. And I'm sorry that most of the investors we have had in this country, especially in that sector you're talking about, belong to the other group. Unfortunately, because I know we've had engagement with them when legal methodology was to be given the teeth that it's supposed to have, and I know the kind of reactions we had. They say over their dead body that this law cannot take place. Traders dictating to the country, dictating. And truly, it happened. The law did not find it was not able to operate, and nobody could tell Mr. President. So the issue is that this problem we have today definitely the issue can be solved by one person in this country, Mr. President. His aides should talk to them. The Minister of Justice, the Attorney General of Federation, Minister of Justice, should please step in and do something for Nigeria by saving us, future generations yet unborn.